Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm First Alert meteorologist Jillian Johnson. We had a very busy week of weather across the nation, and we kick this week's show off with a dangerous heat wave that impacted millions of Americans. Summer arrived with a vengeance across the eastern parts of the United States, with numerous major cities hitting 100 degrees or hotter. Keep in mind, we have yet to record our first triple-digit day down here in central Texas, where that style of heat is way more common this time of the year. Now, the first major heat wave of the summer brought that record-breaking heat to cities up and down the East Coast last week, with some even feeling the hottest temperatures in a century. The ridge of high pressure, or what we like to call the heat dome, brought temperatures above 90 degrees for more than 190 million Americans in the East. But it wasn't just the heat making people feel miserable. Humidity levels soared, which left many dealing with dew point temperatures in the 70s, which resulted in feels-like temperatures reaching up to 108 in some places. The extreme heat also caused thousands to lose power across the Northeast, which shut off the AC for those that had it. We now turn to First Alert meteorologist C.D. Finley, who has more on the weather setup and kind of a look at some of those records from last week in the nation. C.D.
Well, of course, a large heat wave made its way across the eastern half of the United States, and what you'll notice is a long list of city names and temperatures from the records that were broken over the last few days. This right here, just the daily temperature records from June 23rd, 2025. But what you mainly need to know is that 37 eastern U.S. cities tied or broke a daily temperature record that day. Some of them already on this list, as you can see. Same goes for June 24th. In fact, that number jumped up to 50 eastern U.S. cities that tied or broke a daily temperature record, that of course being June 24th. And then here's a closer look at some of the more notable ones. Newark, New Jersey hitting 103, tying that previous record back in 2021. More notable one, Boston, Massachusetts hit 102 and is also breaking that record of 100 degrees back in 2021. That's also over a century of daily temperature record keeping there. As you can see, 1872 is when records were started to begin in Boston. And of course, a few other cities on this list as well, some of which actually hit triple digits for the first time ever and for the earliest time ever. And of course, that continued in June 2025, or June 25th, I should say, but that actually came down to 14 eastern U.S. cities that tied or broke a daily temperature record. But no matter how you look at it, you can see it's been very hot across the eastern half of the United States. Again, New York City hit 102 on June 25th, which actually tied the previous record that was set the day prior.
Thanks, CD. And in the midst of that dangerous heat wave, reports came pouring in from across the central United States as the high temperatures damaged roads and highways. Authorities in South Dakota said concrete buckled on parts of the interstate. Images also came in from Broomfield, Colorado, showing similar damage. Authorities said another road buckled in Lincoln, Nebraska. There are also more reports of heat-related roadway damage in Wisconsin and Missouri. And check this out. Albert Blackwell, a resident in Far East Missouri, captured the exact moment two roads buckled last week. Albert said he was recording the road as it started to bulge. In a few moments, the road buckled as that car was driving over it. He goes on to explain that the road exploded and rose over 18 inches, which sent that car airborne. Not only did much of the eastern half of the nation deal with that record heat, but the combination of that heat and humidity fueled numerous rounds of severe storms over the past week. Take a look at this. Southern Minnesota saw multiple tornadoes on Wednesday. A driver took video of this twister as it crossed the road in front of her. Weather officials received reports of damage to a barn. And severe storms brought historic flooding to Grand Island, Nebraska early Thursday morning. More than half a foot of rain fell in about 6 hours, which resulted in the flooding you're seeing now. Floodwaters rose quickly, which trapped some people in their cars, and others were even forced to flee their homes. And while the heat ramped up, higher up in elevation, the Red Lodge Mountain in Montana saw a summertime snow. A local ski lodge said the 4 inches of snowfall made them take a quick break from the summer activities, but it was short-lived as the heat returned not too long after the snow. And check out this surreal scene of double water spouts offshore in Florida. These water spouts churn near the mouth of the Manatee River. The local mayor there was able to capture this video as they spun side by side. The water spouts stayed away from land and didn't cause any damage. Last week was Lightning Awareness Week, and unfortunately, numerous Americans got struck by lightning along the East Coast. One man died in Florida after being struck, and in South Carolina, 20 people were struck by lightning this past Tuesday after the bolt struck a lake. 12 of the 20 people struck were children. A dozen people were taken to hospitals for injuries like burns, chest pain, and cardiac arrest. Other patients were treated on site and allowed to go home. And wildfires erupted across the southwestern part of the United States last week. This is the view of a fire that sparked in Pine Valley, Utah. At one point, the fire had charred more than 7,000 acres and was 0% contained. Investigators said the fire was triggered by a lightning strike. We're about to head out of June and into July, and for us in Central Texas, that typically means drier and hotter weather will be sticking around as we head into the heart of the summer. Here's more on what an average month of July consists of for Central Texans. The month of July starts off with a normal high of 95 degrees and a low of 73. And by the 31st, the temperature should rise to 98 for the high and 75 for the low. The hottest temperature ever recorded in Central Texas history happened in the month of July. On the 23rd back in 2018, temperatures reached 114 degrees. We've also had some very rare, chilly air in the month of July. The record coldest temperature ever recorded in the month happened back in the year of 2013, when temperatures dropped down to 58 degrees on the 3rd. Now let's talk rainfall. On average, 1.82 inches of rain falls at the Waco Regional Airport throughout the month. July is the driest month of the year here in Central Texas. The wettest July day in history was back in 2004 on the 29th, when 4.93 inches of rain fell that day. The wettest month of July was back in 1902 when nearly 9 inches fell. There has been 3 years where no rain fell in Central Texas in July. Those years are 1930, 1993, and 10 years ago, back in 2015. There's a big holiday for us in the month of July, Independence Day. The 4th of July marks our average first 100-degree day in Central Texas. Now, the normal high for the 4th is 95 and the low is 74. There has been 23 Independence Days where the temperature reached 100 degrees or more. The hottest 4th of July was back in 1933 with the high of 105, and the coldest was back in 1924 when temperatures dropped down to 65 degrees. Since 1900, there's been rain at the Waco Regional Airport on July 4th 29 times. The wettest July 4th was back in 1972 when over 2.5 inches of rain fell. Well, with just the 4th of July just a few days away, many Central Texans may try to head out to our area lakes. For more on how lake levels look as we head into the holiday, here's First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor.
Well, as we approach the 4th of July holiday, a lot of folks probably heading to area lakes to have some fun and cool off. And the good news is all 4 of our major lakes in Central Texas sitting at or above capacity. Levels have come down slightly in Waco, Whitney, and Belton. Still sitting a little above normal, but not by much. Now, Stillhouse Hollow, slightly below normal, 95.7% full, so sitting pretty good, but 1.5 feet below where it should be. Now, all of this is thanks to the rain that we had in June that kept the levels up. It also has helped to keep all of Central Texas from not having burn bans. Now, if you're shooting fireworks for the 4th of July, check with your counties because sometimes they can put temporary bans up, so something to keep an eye on. But burn bans not in place. Drought conditions really not a concern anywhere across Central Texas as well. Some abnormally dry conditions across parts of San Saba County, but the rest of it's in good shape. Drought conditions still a big issue as you move down closer to San Antonio and west of there, and then into the Big Bend counties of West Texas. But here in Central Texas, we're sitting in good shape. It's going to be a hot 4th of July, but the lakes are in good shape, and overall drought conditions not a worry either.
Thanks, Brady. Earlier this week, we had our first named storm of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season develop. Tropical Storm Andrea formed on Tuesday. At its strongest state, the tropical storm had winds of 40 miles per hour. It also quickly fizzled out and thankfully remained a fish storm, staying around 1,400 miles away from the East Coast. Environmental conditions have led to a slow start to the season, with strong winds and cooler ocean temperatures due to Saharan dust. But despite the slow start, NOAA is forecasting up to 10 hurricanes this season. And take a look at this. This is a fireball. It was spotted over areas of the southeast this past Thursday. The American Meteor Society said it looks to be a daytime fireball that caused a sonic boom. That typically happens when a meteorite drops a fireball, but not always. Some of the video that you're watching now was captured on a dash cam in South Carolina. The driver said she saw a big flash in the sky. It came down and then disappeared, almost like a firework. The National Weather Service in Charleston says satellite image also showed streaks in the sky. Reports of fireballs are somewhat common at night, but to have one occur in the daytime is more unusual. All right, coming up next on Weather Extra, First Alert meteorologist Deshaun Bellafury has more on a new bill approved by Texas senators that could impact the time change one day. We have more on this when we come back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Texas lawmakers want Texans to stop changing the clocks, and senators have approved a new bill which adopts permanent daylight saving time. Here's First Alert meteorologist Sean Bellafury with more.
House Bill 1393 goes into effect on September 1st, one of the new laws signed into place by Governor Abbott, and this creates Texas time, a new time zone, which is permanent daylight saving time for the state, which is what we're in right now. So even though this goes into effect on September 1st, that means that we're done with the time changes, right? Well, actually, you're completely wrong. And it's a federal law that is stopping HB 1393 from going into effect. The Uniform Time Act of 1966 states that states can opt out of daylight saving time, but they can't opt out of standard time. So we'd have to make a change to that law first before Texas time becomes a thing. So what would happen if Texas time were to become a thing? Well, you wouldn't notice much of a change for much of the year. It's the darker times, November, December, January, February, and March, that we would notice a big change as we don't change the clocks. On the winter solstice, December 21st, we would have a sunrise of 8:24 in the morning. And we're going to start to editorialize a little bit here. I am not a fan of permanent daylight saving time, or now Texas time. Standard time is where I think we should go. And there's been a lot of research on the subject. The American Academy for Sleep Medicine says that standard time more aligns with the body's clock. And there's been research that says that standard time, or permanent saving time rather, is more akin to permanent jet lag. Another issue, it's just way too dark in the morning, and we actually tried permanent daylight saving time in 1974, but repealed it because of how dark it was during the school year. And just to show you what I mean by that, these are some of the sunrises and sunsets during the heart of the school year. We would have 98 days in a row with an 8 a.m. sunrise or later. Kids going to school in the dark for much of the year. But to be fair to the other side, on the flip side, if we were in permanent standard time, we would have 134 days with a 6 a.m. or earlier sunrise. There's no great answer to this. We can't change the amount of sunlight that we see. We just have to move the clock. So what would happen across the country if Texas time were a thing? Well, currently there are 4 time zones right now, and with Texas time, it would be 12 p.m. in Texas, but it would actually be 11 a.m. in far west Texas, which is currently in the Mountain Time Zone. And because there are other states with trigger laws that would go into effect if we made a change to the Uniform Time Act, 12 p.m. in Texas means 10 a.m. in the Rocky Mountains, 11 a.m. in the Plains, 12 p.m. in Minnesota, and 12 and 1 p.m. off in the Midwest. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafury, KWTX News 10.
Up next on Weather Extra, we speak with a professor of public health and preventive medicine to learn more about measles. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Measles was declared eliminated in the United States in the year 2000, but we continue to see periodic outbreaks of this very contagious virus, including the one that's been occurring this year. In this week's Degrees of Science, Brady speaks with a professor of public health and preventative medicine about why the measles virus is such a health concern, and also about how safe the measles vaccine is.
Dr. Shaw, I guess right off the bat, what are the symptoms of measles?
Measles is a contagious respiratory virus, and the symptoms commonly look just like cold: runny nose, cough, congestion, high fever. But then the characteristic rash appears. It starts at the hairline and it spreads down through the body. For some children, that's how it ends. But unfortunately, we know 1 out of 4 children will end up in the hospital with complications. So for some of them, it may mean pneumonia, dehydration, and for some children, they may go on developing a serious brain infection and swelling.
How contagious is measles? Does it spread really quickly?
It's one of the most contagious viruses we have. We know that probably 9 out of 10 people who are not immune to this infection will get infected. So it infects all those who are not immune. It spreads very easily through air. In fact, the virus can linger in the air for 2 hours, even if a person who was infected left the room. So it's a virus that will find you if you're not immune.
So do people that are contagious with this, are they already showing symptoms, or can they be contagious and spread this before you see any visible symptoms?
Unfortunately, people may be infected, not know about it, because they may not have all the characteristic symptoms. And in fact, people are contagious 4 days before the characteristic rash appears and for 4 days after the rash appeared. It's one of those viruses where people may be unknowingly infected, or even if they saw a healthcare provider who thought maybe the child just had a cold, will not properly diagnose the child, and as such, those people will go on transmitting the infection to others.
So this virus was declared eliminated back in 2000 in the United States. So what's causing these kind of periodic outbreaks? We've had one in 2014, one in 2019, and then this one that's going on now.
Essentially, we've seen a decline in vaccine confidence, and a larger number of children are under-vaccinated or not vaccinated at all. When you look at the outbreaks, whether it's the current 2025, majority of the people who are infected are people who are not vaccinated or their vaccination status is unknown. The same situation occurred in 2019 when majority, 9 out of 10 people who were infected with measles virus were either not vaccinated or did not know their vaccination status.
So how effective and safe is the measles, mumps, rubella, the MMR vaccine that is out for this?
The vaccine is very safe. We know it's very safe because we have studied it in clinical trials, and we have also what's known as post-licensure vaccine safety monitoring in the US. It's a sophisticated system that monitors adverse events after vaccination on a large population level, so even very rare and uncommon complications can be detected. So the vaccination itself is a safer choice for parents because you don't know whether your child, when he or she gets infected, whether she will just have a mild case of measles or will go on developing a severe infection.
So for those of us that were vaccinated when we were kids and now adults, are we covered in our entire life, or is there a need for a booster or something like this as you get older?
In general, the vaccination itself provides long-lasting immunity and protection. However, for people who might have been vaccinated before 1968, they should check with their healthcare provider to make sure they receive vaccine that will provide or have provided that protection for life. If you're someone who was vaccinated and might have had cancer or have received medications that will suppress your immune system, you might be at increased risk for measles. It's important you reach out to your provider and ask them whether you would be a candidate for a booster.
So with this as contagious as it is, I know there's been stories of clinics or hospitals having to close down because they're worried that there was a measles case in there. If you're a parent that has a kid that is showing symptoms, I know it compares to other ones as well, what should you do to try to, is it better to call the doctor or something to figure out if it's measles or potentially just something else?
I would recommend call your doctor first, because the last thing we would want is with a child who may have measles is to show up in urgent care or in pediatrician's office or in ER and spread the virus to others. So call your pediatrician or local health department and tell them your child has these symptoms, may be unvaccinated, you might have traveled to a high-risk area, and ask them what you should do. Typically, what we would recommend that you alert your pediatrician so the pediatrician can place you in a room directly and avoid you spending time in the waiting area to ensure that you won't transmit the virus to those around you.
To hear more about the measles and the safety of the measles vaccine, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube, or you can head over to our website at kwtx.com/degreesofscience. Straight ahead on Weather Extra, we learn how a tiny seed growing on farms in Minnesota could be the answer to the environmental cost of commercial flying. More on this when we come back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Every time you take a commercial flight, there's an environmental cost, and scientists are now trying to grow a solution that could also be a big business for Minnesota farmers, as a tiny seed could solve this problem.
And this one's still kind of in the middle of flowering.
Here at the U of M research fields, the sun shines on a solution in bloom.
Yeah, this is an ancient crop.
It's called camelina.
It's similar to canola, so it produces oil, but unlike canola, it survives a Minnesota winter.
The seeds can be refined into cooking oil and further refined into sustainable aviation fuel.
There have been flights using camelina fuel, sole camelina fuel.
Researcher Matthew Ott is part of the team perfecting the crop for prime time. Something to stand up to Minnesota winters that farmers will flock to.
Powerful little plant.
Yeah, and economic too.
They're tiny seeds, but they could have a huge impact. The U.S. Department of Energy says sustainable aviation fuel could cut emissions by up to 94%.
And airlines want to cut emissions. Globally, flying accounts for nearly 3% of our air emissions, but the industry wants to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, with airlines like Delta aiming to use 10% sustainable fuel by 2030.
This could be a major industry for Minnesota.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We're kind of the leader on developing it as a winter crop.
Farmers across the state are piloting the product right now. Some tell us they use it as a cover crop and love that they can grow a second crop on the same land during the same season.
The camelina pods can be harvested over the top of the soybean seedlings.
Ott says it also helps prevent runoff of farming fertilizers, improving our water quality.
Yeah, there's a bee right there.
And the early bloomers provide nourishment for critical pollinators.
Yeah, it grows fast.
And many are hoping the industry will too.
We're early in the process, but we're scaling up.
In Falcon Heights with photojournalist Joe Mears, Erin Hassanzadeh, WCCO News.
Well, that's all we have for you on this week's episode of Weather Extra. I hope you all have a wonderful 4th of July. We'll see you again next weekend.